Hello, Marianne.
Hello, Veronica.
I'm so glad to meet you.
Mm, mm,
Actually, I met you online, and that's the only way I met you. And you are the first generator I met on
mm,
John Martin's YouTube channel.
mm-hmm.
And you really touched me and you really impacted me. And I want to meet you since then. And it's a long time now. And I love that I responded to doing this project of interviewing people who are deep in their experiment.
Mm,
And I want to show the real person behind the body graph. I'm so
mm-hmm.
excited you responded to my
Uh-huh,
invitation.
uh-huh. I never know why I respond either. That's such a mystery, you know? It's not like the mind is just so not involved with the response. It just is the energy says yes or the energy says no, and then it happens or not, you know? It's quite something.
Yeah, does that bother you sometimes? Is it scary that you don't know?
Mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. Does it bother me sometimes? It bothers my mind sometimes, you know, because I'll go, like to this interview. So this morning I woke up, I had a coffee. But the mind comes in and says, "Oh, but you don't want to eat anything because you have an interview. And what if you need the bathroom?" All this kind of stuff, you know? So it's like the mind can get bothered, but I'm not bothered. Very different.
Mm, yeah. Do you remember who sat down on your first reading with Ra?
Mm. Great question. I do remember her. Oh my God, yes.
Do you care to
Wow.
tell us?
I can. Um, would you like to hear?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, yes, I had come from a spiritual background with meditation and celebration, and I did Vipassana. I did so much for 20 years before I had my human design reading. So, Rob was telling me about my chart, and I remember I talked so much during that reading. It was embarrassing afterwards when I listened to it. It was like, who was I trying to convince that I was already living this, him or me, you know? Because from what I was saying and sharing, it was like it was like that person thought she was already living it, you know? But then it got down to the strategy because he had never uh, brought type before. I had met human design 3 years before I met Ra, and I met the gates and the channels and the white book and the black book, and I thought, oh wow, this is an amazing system to love and accept yourself. With my 20 years of spiritual practice, I thought I was doing. But little did I know that I had quite a journey to get to myself. Um, anyway, so that in that, then he said at the end, um, he was telling me about everything in life. I had to wait for it to come to me. I could no longer offer my help. I could no longer um, uh, start something, initiate something, plan something. Everything needed to come to me. And that I needed to wait for everything to come to me. And I remembered um, getting excited. It sounded like, oh, this is going to be cool, you know? Yet he said something that for me, I'm a 6'2", which I don't want to get into it, but trust is very important for the 6'2". And he basically said that he couldn't trust anything that came out of my mouth. And I was devastated. And I didn't understand. And he said, no, the only truth I can accept from you is when you go, uh-huh, or uh-uh. Otherwise, and I have a defined throat. So that freaked me out. So I stopped talking because I didn't want to tell lies about me or be dishonest about myself. I really wanted to say my truth. So um, it was quite a ride. My God. Yeah. But anyway, who she was, there's flavors of her inside, but who she was is like mm, she's not really here anymore. There's flavors mixed in with who I am, but I could never say no. I was always feeling guilty. I have an open solar plex, so I always felt guilty. I always felt like I did something wrong. All of those aspects of the open centers. I cared so much what people thought about me. Um, all of that, it's gone. It's all gone. And that was a big part of who I was.
Mm. And did Ra change 20 years later after you
Mm,
met him?
he mellowed.
Mm-hmm.
He mellowed. He was mm, quite intense. I remember him sharing because we became very close. He became a really good friend. And I remember him sharing, and he would say it in class even, that he'd walk into a classroom and just want to go with a sword, off with their heads, next life. Like that's the energy. He was so intense, and that impact of the manifester. Um, and I I had passed through my first 7 years. I had completed my first 7 years, and then he taught aura. So there was no aura before. And when he taught aura, it was like, that's why we have the strategy we have. I mean, I could feel his aura, the impact of it, but I didn't know it. I didn't have the words. It wasn't explained or taught back then. So that was really something. Yes, he changed. Um, he's a pure freak, so he's always mutating in a sense, huh? And yeah, he mellowed a lot. He he went from a warrior to um, a compassionate teacher. Mm,
Mm-hmm.
mm.
Do you miss him?
Mm, sometimes.
Is there something you would like to ask him?
Mm, don't know. No
Hmm.
response.
Hmm. Um, it's very interesting how our mind can play us. Do you remember the best tricks of your mind, or um, are they still so good as before?
Mm-mm. No, 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 no. They're it they don't my mind does not stop trying,
Mm,
but very, very rarely does it grab me. The mind will say, you should do this, you should do that. Oh, you have to do this. It's time to do that. You better do this. Oh, you haven't done this. All of this. It's such a judge, huh? And I remember when I first started making sounds in response, and I would go, and my mind would scream. I mean, really scream. What do you mean, no? You can't say no to that. You have to do that. Or if I said yes, it would scream, what do you mean, yes? You can't, you can't do that. So I was like a bit in shock in the beginning because my mind never screamed at me before. And then I realized that the reason it never screamed at me before was because I was obeying it all the time. I was believing it, I was believing whatever it said to me to be true. Whatever it told me to do, I would think, oh, I should do that. So I gave a lot of power to my mind in doing that. And I thought my mind was me in a sense, huh? With the spiritual journey that I went on, yes, it was follow your heart, follow your feelings. But for me, it was just my mind disguising itself as my feelings or my heart, huh? So that was shocking in the beginning. I remember one instance where I was offered my dream. My husband had just asked me too, if you could do anything, what would you want to do? And it was like, I would love to work with musicians because I love music. And then my friends sent me a fax because in those days there was no internet, asking me if I would work with them. They were coming to the US and I had an and I was devastated. I just cried and cried because I knew I needed to honor my no. And yeah, it's those situations where you see that this inner authority, whether it's sacral or emotional, or even if you're a reflector or a mental projector, your decision making process is like your GPS. Left turn, right turn, straight ahead. It really guides. It's not like the vehicle's not going to go there anyway, because we do live whatever we're meant to do because we're not in control. But the passenger relaxes because the decision is made correctly. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when people come to human design and they hear about no mind, and
There's no such thing.
exactly, the mind is still there.
Aha, aha. Yes, yes, of course it is. My mind is always talking to me, but it's more like a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like, and it disappears, and it disappears. And then, like I said before, once in a while, it will come and I'll go, oh, wow, yeah, I really should. Oh, wait a second, that's my mind, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no mind.
Yeah, and also because some people think, okay, this is a real body awareness system, human design. So shall I completely dismiss my mind as something bad?
Mm-mm. Oh,
Mm.
mm-mm, mm-mm. No, I love my mind.
Me too.
I love my mind. I have my mind. I love to wonder, you know? It's like, oh, I wonder what will happen, blah, blah. And I wonder about this and I wonder about that. I love to research things and look things up. I just don't allow my mind to tell me what to do
Mm,
or how to do it. I don't let my mind run my life, but I love my mind. It's kind of a strange little mind. It's a little quirky. But I love it. And with all my I was 20 years in a spiritual practice before human design. And I really was trying to get to a place of no mind. I thought that was the goal.
mm,
But I don't see it as that. It's to me, if you get to this place where your mind is no longer running your life, you're so present,
mm,
which to me is what life is all about, to be present as myself. And the mind just does what it does.
mm. And can we be present all the time?
Uh-uh.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't know if anybody I can because it's like, well, maybe it would be good. I would love you to ask me a few questions about this if you would. Um, if I even care, if I want to, if it matters to me, that kind of thing about being present all the time.
Does it matter to you to be present all the time
Mm, mm, mm,
and to watch your mind watch itself? Is it interesting for your mind to try to take control back?
It's tricky. It's tricky. And in some situations, I mean, years and years ago, maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, my daughter and grandchildren were in a car accident, and I was pretty far away from them. And I was freaked out. I mean, I was freaked out, and my mind was like, oh my God, are they okay? And you have to go to them. And it just kept bombarding me with things I needed to do. So I asked my husband to ask me some questions, and he asked me, am I okay? And I went, mm-mm. And then he asked, well, at this point, is there anything you can do? And I went, mm-mm. And with just knowing that there was nothing I could do, even though I was not okay because, they're my family, um, I knew there was nothing I can do in that moment. So the mind just stopped talking to me. So that's always a good one for me anyway. If I'm really disturbed about something, is there anything I can do as a question? Most of the time, I would say almost all the time, there's there's nothing. So I have to wait and just wait and see.
Mm. So patience is something the mind often hates, uh,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, but patience, and really in all the spiritual and in everything we learn about patience, even in sports and somehow, and still it's the hardest thing to do. I wonder why. Maybe it's because we're in search, a constant search of something. The mind doesn't stop, and especially nowadays with children, when the latest discovery shows that when they look at those devices all the time, and their mind gets used to race all the time, so when they stop and they're bored, they cannot stand it. Like the
Mm,
mind wants more entertainment.
mm,
And scientists say that earlier we were actually used to being bored, and a lot of creativity came out of boredom and
mm,
being patient. So um, the new people are very different, and I'm so glad when you said it's. I don't go into the mechanic of human. It's about human design. It's about living it, and
mm,
strategy and authority being on the surface is the key.
mhm, mhm,
That's what people, because I know I read your book, so I know you're coming from those spiritual places, and where you have those people chasing enlightenment or
uh-huh,
stuff like that.
uh-huh.
uh yeah, would you like to elaborate on that, on the how we are, strategy authority is really the key. But why is it the key? Because everything else you learn, all the other information is just supporting this. You just mentioned you didn't even have type and aura,
Mm,
and that
mm,
was not the problem. Hmm.
mm, mm. Um, well, as I said earlier, when I first met human design, I thought I was loving myself. I mean, I had a pretty cool not self. I had a good time, you know. It wasn't like I was suffering. But it was I had just put on another costume, a spiritual costume with meditation and celebration and music and dancing and all of this. So it was another costume that I put on. And I thought I was accepting myself. When I had that was a few years before. And then I met Ra and I had my reading with him. And what he said to me, because I was asked to drive them to the next place, he and the woman who were organizing human design in America at that time. And so I drove them to the next place, and he said to me, I stayed at the hotel where the lecture was being given. And he said to me, "You can ask me anything. You can come and knock on my door and ask me anything." So I would go with my chart and I would knock on the door and I would say, "What about this?" And he'd say, "Only in response." And then I'd go knock on the door hours later, and what about this? And he'd say only in response. And then uh, they asked me if I wanted to have lunch with them. I responded, and I went and met them for lunch. And I said to him, "What I have," without going into too many details, gate 15, which is the love of humanity. I said, "What about my love of humanity?" He said, "Only in response." And I burst out crying. So I really got that I had to wait for everything to come to me and respond. And I think that what you were saying about boredom, I never allowed myself to be bored. I didn't really live through boredom before. I would just go do something, call a friend, let's go for a coffee, go on a trip, go visit my family. If I got bored, there was so many things I could initiate. And what happened was I was waiting, waiting, waiting. Nothing was coming. All the people in my life were used to me organizing something or calling them, or, so nothing came. And once in a while, a friend would say, "Do you want to meet for a coffee or something?" But I was just in this limbo of waiting, and I hated waiting. Oh, I hated waiting. I hated it. I did not like it at all because my whole life I pretended to be a manifester, which is so much the conditioning in the world, the just do it, like Nike, just do it, get out there and do it. If you don't do it, who's going to do it? All of that. So the waiting, and then I hit boredom. Oh my God, that was awful. I don't even remember how long the boredom was for. It felt like years. I know it was not, but it felt like years. But on the other side of boredom was being. So somehow this waiting transformed into being, because I'm not waiting anymore for anything. I don't care if anybody contacts me. Don't. It's like I love being with me. I love being with myself, and before it was always the other. I wanted to be with the other. I wanted to have fun and go dancing and have a good time and all of this. And now it's just this place of being. And in that, I'll read a good book, I'll watch a movie, I'll Google, I'll do this, that, I'll have a cup of coffee. It's such a simple life. Yes.
So is it your life?
Hmm?
Is it your life?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
The correct life, I mean.
Well, correct. I don't know. Correct. We use that word a lot because it's hard. It's it's better than right, because with
Mm,
right there's wrong. But it's more like once you're in the experiment for a while, you can just feel ooh, this inner alignment that's just kind of moving you, huh?
mm,
So it's not even correct anymore. It just is your life, like you were saying. But I still don't, you know, uh, plan something without hearing my sound first.
mm,
I might have an idea about something, and I'll mention it to my husband, and he'll say, "Well, do you really want to do that?" Often I go,
mm,
but the old me would have done it. You know
mm,
what I mean? It's like how I did so many things. And the one thing that was shocking for me, um, I met human design when I was mid 40s, like 44, something like that. But I started my experiment a few years later because there was no type before, so I started waiting a few years later. So, kind of mid 40s somewhere. And I stopped. I stopped talking. I stopped initiating. And I remember laid on my bed and said to myself, I do not need to do anything unless someone knocks on that door and asks me. And that was the first time I realized how exhausted I was. Exhausted to my cells. I was exhausted. And I didn't know that before because I just kept going. And I have to say, the sacral center, it's either regenerating or degenerating. And when it's used correctly, it's regenerating. And when it's not, when the mind's pushing, pushing, do this, do that. And the sacral energy has never said yes to it. It degenerates. So I would say I was really degenerated. I was really degenerated. And now, I just turned 74. I have more energy now than I did in my 20s. My body's not the same. It's very different. The energy inside is not my body, it's energy, huh? My body is definitely not the same. That I can feel that it's 74 years old. But the energy, when I go, wow, it's amazing.
Mm.
It's amazing how much energy is available. Yeah. I had no idea, like when you asked me and I went, to this time together, I can feel all the energy I have for it, just as we're together here. But
Mm-hmm.
2 minutes before I sat down, I was just kind of quiet, moving around the house, waiting for it to be time. So this energy is powerful, this sacral energy.
Mm. But we talk about the mind sometimes when running our business, so to say, and we're degenerating. It's a good question that can maybe take us back to center ourselves.
Mm,
Hmm?
yes. Um, if you're running a business, you're in it. Okay. So the mind can tell you, you need to take care of this now. And what I've seen is that somehow there's this movement that happens that's not necessarily a decision, it's a movement because you've responded to being in the business, to starting, having a business, whatever, hopefully responded. So you've got this business and things need to happen. It's like I respond to doing things in human design or helping my sister, and things need to happen. But I allow my body's movement to decide the timing. I don't know if that makes sense. I can give an example. I was raised, my ancestry is Italian. So I was raised, especially back in those days, to be a good Italian wife and mother, right? You cooked, you cleaned, made sure you deep cleaned on Saturdays. I mean, I'm talking years and years ago, okay? And then I started responding. I didn't feel like cooking. I didn't have energy to cook. I kept going to cooking, and I would walk by a pretty table in the living room, and I'd say, "Oh, it's so dusty." My mind would say, "You should dust it." My body walked by. Hmm? I'd walk by it again, and my finger would go through the dust. There was so much dust. My mind saying, "Hey, it's really dusty. You have to dust it." My body didn't. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting in a chair. My body gets up, no thought. My body gets up, it goes into the cabinet, gets the cloth, and I'm dusting. It's
Mhm.
happening. And this is what, oh, okay. I didn't know if we disappeared. And this is what I see happens um, with my work with human design. Like I'll respond to doing something, but I have to wait for the energy to move me. Even though I said yes, I still have to wait for the energy to move me. It's like Ra asked me to write that book. that I wrote. And I was 2 years in my experiment. Oh my God, my mind, you have to write that book. You have to write that book. You said, you have to write that book. Finally, after a few years, it stopped telling me to write the book. And it took till I was 10 years in the experiment for the book to happen.
Mm.
You know, and when it happened, it came out in a week. I mean, there was so much energy. It was as if the mind wasn't even engaged. It was like a flood. The floodgates opened. And that's how I see, like when I send out a newsletter, I don't think I'm going to send out a newsletter today. There's a feeling inside, oh, I need to send a newsletter, blah, 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 but I wait. And then all of a sudden, I'm at my laptop and I'm opening up the program to create the newsletter, and it's happening. And that's very different than the mind forcing my energy to do something, huh?
Mm.
Hmm.
So if there is any amount of resistance, does it mean we're on not on the least resistant path and it's a red flag?
Hmm. I call it a signpost
Mm-hmm.
that I've not been correct. You know, let's say I don't know. I can give a little example of, because you become so sensitive to resistance. Oh, you become super, super sensitive. With all the layers of the not self, I was like, a bumper car?
Mm-hmm.
A bumper car. I was like a bumper car, bumping into things, but not really even realizing I was meeting resistance. I would just plow through. And I remember a couple of years ago, I don't say hello first. I
Mm-hmm.
might smile, but I don't initiate speaking first. And I went into an elevator, and there was a man in the back of the elevator, and I just said good morning. That's it. Why? I felt the ripple of resistance. So who knows? He could have been a manifester. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I could feel it, and it was like, wow, I initiated that. That's it. It's just for me, it's always been a signpost. If I meet resistance from my husband or from anyone, and it's not um, a huge thing. It's something little, but you can feel it. You can feel it. It's like uh, I can just I know when I might just quickly say something to my husband and I didn't ask him, and I can feel it. So I say, oops, okay, then I'll put it in a yes, no question for him. It's we're human. So there's no perfect. No one's perfect. We're perfectly us. I'm perfectly me, all with everything, mistakes or whatever you want to call it and all. I'm perfectly me, but I'm not perfect. And that's the beauty. You just relax into yourself as you are, and you can feel when you've met resistance. And, the mind wants to say, what's wrong with them? Did they just have a bad day or something? Because someone may have come back energetically or with words where it's almost antagonistic a little or a little aggressive. But now I know to look at myself, you know.
Mm-hmm. But when they're challenging situations, that's not always resistance, right?
What do you mean by challenging?
Difficult. Sometimes you
Ah,
respond to something, but then it's difficult.
uh-huh. Oh, often difficult. Often. I mean, that was one of the first things I learned, because I was asked to help. Ra had asked me to help doing something and to help this woman who was running America do it. Oh my God, it was awful. It was awful. It was like, it was difficult. So I remember saying to him, so my sacral will remember this experience. And the next time she asks me to help, I'll go, That's what my mind thought. Okay. Because the mind was very involved. And he said, oh, Marianne, it doesn't work like that. You'll just respond how you respond the next time. So yes, it's not a picnic what we respond to, you know. I responded to being here in the US so my husband could be have treatments with the doctors and specialists, and nothing serious, but things needed to be taken care of. And it's difficult for me to be in the US right now. It's I feel more at home in Europe, and I can't walk to the grocery store, all of these things that I'm used to doing. So, but it's not resistance. It's just the flow isn't as easy. I'm still in a flow, but it's more like, mm, you know, but it's resistance for me is when the other person resists. Their difficult situations are just life, you know. We go to the airport, the flight's been canceled, we're rescheduled the next day, we go the next day, the flight's canceled again. That's not resistance. That's a difficult situation. And with 2027, we know there's going to be a lot of these things happening more and more. So, the resistance I talk about is when you meet resistance from the other person. That's when I know I have not been correct. You know, if we as a generator push and we meet this resistance, then okay, I need to look at myself. So for me, that's the difference. Resistance has to do with the other, and difficult situations are just part of life.
Yeah, because generators sometimes reach a plateau, and if they were correct, they would be able to sustain it later. But it's not like we don't reach plateaus, right?
What do
Life.
you mean by a plateau? I don't
Like,
quite.
for instance, when let's say you responded to learn to dance, and
Uh-huh.
at the beginning it can be very difficult, and it looks like you're not really progressing, and at some point you think like, okay, I'm doing it for so long and I cannot still do it. But if you persist, if you stay a little bit longer, and at some point it just not only you start dancing well, but you start enjoying it so much. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
mean.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And in those situations, I would, for me, I asked my husband to ask me questions, or my daughter, or a friend, someone to ask, do you still want to do this? Are you okay to stay with it? Do you need to stay with it? Because those are three different questions. Are you okay to? Do you want to? Do you need to? They're very different and they bring different responses. So as soon as I hear my response, if I'll give an example. I've been doing these free online transit forecasts, right? They're a lot of work. I responded to doing it, but Mamma Mia, they are a lot of work. And the last time I did it, I was like, whoa. I said for April, I said to my husband, I don't know if I can keep doing it. He said, well, do you need to stop? Uh-uh. Are you okay to stop? Uh-uh. Do you want to stop? Uh-huh. So I know I can't, but I wanted to. So he asked me a few more questions, and I got to a place where, okay, I'm going to do the rest of the year, but differently and more simply. I can't continue as I was doing it. And now I'm very comfortable in it. The energy's back, it's flowing. I found something that works for me. So I wouldn't say that a person has to stay with something when they reach a plateau. Who knows? It may be that they got all they needed from the experience. But to check in with the inner authority or the decision making process to see if it's still correct,
Mm.
you know, because otherwise it's the mind saying, oh, just stay with it a little longer. Just stay with it. You need to get over this hump. Why? Maybe I don't need to get over the hump. Maybe I learned whatever I was supposed to learn, and I don't mean the dance steps. Whatever I was supposed to experience is a better word already, and that's it. I don't know, because it's if the energy is not there, or the energy has um mm, how to say it, has decreased, then I just need to check, is it still correct? And if I have an aha, the energy's there to keep going. Yeah. Otherwise, we degenerate.
Mm.
See, I don't think, quitting is a strange word. Quitting means that there's an end that we should get to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, if you quit something, that means you should have stayed. You're ending something before you reach the end goal. But for me, human design is not about a goal. It's about being yourself and doing what is good for yourself and correct for yourself. And so the only end goal is really is that we die. It's the only one. The rest is just the unfolding of our life. And the seven-centered world that we came from was very goal oriented, attaining something, whether it was a goal to build a career or build a family or attain enlightenment. There was always this goal, huh? And the mind was very much running the show. This nine centered, and also, with the chakra system, you had to do these things to move your energy up so it would go out your crown chakra. Well, the nine centered is not that. The nine centered is to relax into those centers that are defined, and to allow the white centers to just be open to what comes in without thinking that's who you are. So it's a very different process, huh?
Mm. I love the way you explained it, because I have sometimes questions from people, like when I tell them about their and sacral energy, and they say, "Well, what if I never respond to washing the dishes or doing some?"
That's well, just help them to see that's their mind talking.
Mm.
Who's talking? See, the mind talks in words. Our bodies don't talk in words. The spleen might say something, but it's quick and it only says it once and it never comes back, you know? So it's the mind trying to give reasons why one should not experiment. because it doesn't want us to.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Did you ever doubt the human design system?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I doubted the whole experiment. I did not for long. But when I started, it was like, I don't know if this is going to work. Nobody else was living it because it was brand new, the information of strategy and authority. So there was nowhere to look. I felt totally alone. I felt like I was going against the whole world as the world lived. And the only person I could ask was Ra, and I couldn't ask him because he was a manifester and I couldn't initiate. So I was really alone. So, I mean, yes, I had a lot of friends disappear. They did not like who I was becoming, they liked who I was. Family got upset with me. I mean, it's not easy to experiment with this as you're older because everyone's used to you being who you were. You know, they don't want you to be who you are. they love they love who you were. They love your not self. That's who they're used to. That's who they're comfortable with. So, when you start to wait to respond and you go to someone you love, they're not happy with that. What I do is I add with the help of Rob because my was so strong. And he once said to me in a reading, it's just for this now. It's not forever and ever. So I started adding, not now. Not now. Maybe later, maybe another time. So it gave a little space to my Um, so yes, I doubted it. But there was something that was happening inside. See, most of my spiritual practice was more a belief system, a mental belief system. If I meditate, this will, it's hard to put into words. This was cellular. This was my body was changing. The cells inside me were changing. And I could feel, um, I remember I was standing in the kitchen about 4 or 5 months in the experiment. And I remember feeling inside that something was aligning, like, it was very much getting aligned inside. And I knew I never experienced that before. I knew that. Um, and that was when the doubt started to disappear.
Hmm.
Yeah. And in the beginning, you can't trust this in the beginning. It will be a mental trust. You just have to see if you want to try the experiment. And if you do, and you start feeling something's happening inside that is new, then you slowly start relaxing in the experiment and you start to accept it more. And from the acceptance, it starts becoming a trust. But there's no trust in the beginning. How can you trust it? You don't know. You can't trust it because someone says, oh, this works. That's giving your inner authority away again. So it's like it's just about if you want to experiment or not, if you want to try it out for yourself. And I love, Ross said it over and over and over again. Um, don't believe anything I say. You experiment and see for yourself.
Yeah.
That feels like a perfect way to end, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Yeah. Don't believe anything I've said. You experiment and see for yourself.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, that was joy. Thank
Yes.
you.
I so enjoyed being with you, Veronica.
Me too. Would you like to meet again?
Hmm. Don't know. Maybe I feel, you know, I was supposed to come to Bulgaria
Mm.
and COVID happened. So
Mm.
who knows what might happen in the future.
Mm. Well, thank you for this wonderful hour we spent together, and mm, I think that the audience will also enjoy it. So thank
Ah,
you for
good.
sharing yourself with
Uh-huh.
us, and wish you uh, joy in your path, Marianne. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much, Veronica. You too.
Thank
And
you.
everyone else who listens. Enjoy your ride. Bye.
Bye bye.